So when one grinds an ordinary glass, one can make it so that it becomes a powerful lens. One can also, when one polishes things, one can remove the dirt from them. And in one's life too, if one practices, one can reduce the defilements bit by bit. And in their place, a clean stream of consciousness will enter. So every second of the time when there is effort and sati, accurate aim, collectedness of samadhi, and paññā, these mental states enter the mind when one practices. And to the extent that the defilements are limited, then one gains these wholesome qualities of effort, sati, and so on. So when these qualities, effort, sati, accurate aim, samadhi, and paññā, wisdom, have a place in one's mind, the mind becomes very clean, and one sees the distinction between mind and matter, nama and rupa. One then comes to see how this nama and rupa, mind and matter, is related as cause and effect. And when one sees in this way, seeing that there's just mind and matter, nama and rupa, then the belief in a self, a belief in a soul, is removed, because one doesn't see anything in there. When one sees how this mind and matter are related as cause and effect, one comes to see that there's no one creating this. There's no creator. Mind and matter, nama and rupa, are all simply occurring due to causes. And of course there are many types of matter that are created by karma, past karma, but Sayadaw won't confuse things by talking about that. But there's also physicality, matter that is created by the mind, matter that is created by the weather, and by nutritious food that contains nutritive essence. And so as we know that when one has good food, then one's physical state of being becomes good. When one eats bad food, then one's physical state of being becomes bad. So when one sees how mind and matter are related as cause and effect, this removes any doubt about how things happen. And one sees that this is happening now. Cause and effect is occurring in whatever one sees. And this must have been so in the past. And as it is happening now, it will also be in the future. One comes to understand this. So this removes intense delusion about what really is. And this is very good. So after reaching this stage, if one continues to practice, one sees how what we observe, each arises due to its own cause. And one comes to see that this mind and matter, which arises due to causes, it doesn't stay that way. It comes to an end. And one sees this about all the things which one observes. They just come to an end. As one continues to practice, one sees this happen in a very fast, fleeting way. And one becomes skilled in observing the object and becomes very satisfied because of this. One's work is clean, and one's mind is clean. Thus, light emits from one's body. The blood becomes clean and it makes the skin clear. Even people who were initially ugly become good looking because of the practice, because the greed, hatred and delusion which make one look ugly, which make one look not very good, are eliminated. They aren't arising anymore in one's mind. And joy and other factors also occur in a special way, as Sayadaw mentioned last night. And when we reach this stage, then one has to understand that there are better things to come. And this can, sometimes people know this because the teacher urges them. There are better things to come, to keep on going. So at this stage, when one keeps on going, and continues to practice, one won't back up. If one reaches this stage in the practice, except for people who have the objective to become a Buddha, to become a silent Buddha, or to become an Arahant, all others, if they continue to practice, they will gain at least the first stage of enlightenment, Sotapaddi path and fruition. And doing so will will gain the benefit of having been born a human. Having reached the first stage of the path, one's commitment to sila, keeping basic sila, keeping the 5 precepts, will become firm. One will be able to live as a true human being. One will be able to keep one's mind, mentality humane, and one will be able to, although one is already has the intelligence of a human being, one will gain special human knowledge. So, at this time, one will understand that the knowledge gained through the practice is better than the knowledge one has gained through through getting a degree. And one will understand that this practice brings more happiness than any amount of worldly wealth. So if one reaches this stage, one will gain individual peace. And one's moral shame and moral fear will become steadfast. So these qualities will make one's life peaceful. And one can also work to make one's environment peaceful. So there are many benefits to reaching this stage in the practice. After about 2 weeks of the retreat, Sayadaw spoke about 5 factors to be fulfilled if one wants to gain special Dhamma. And he spoke about this to encourage the yogis. And these are called the Padani Anga, or just 5, called 5, also 5 limbs of striving. But these factors, these qualities are the qualities of one who can gain special knowledge in this life. And these qualities occur in a distinct way at this stage in the practice. The first quality is faith, and when Sayadaw spoke about this topic earlier, he just spoke about faith in an ordinary way. But at this stage in the practice, one has gained knowledge and therefore one's faith increases because of one's direct experience. So one's faith is quite strong, although it is not unshakable yet. The faith is quite strong. And the second quality is health. At this stage in the practice, one's blood circulation has become quite good because of the practice. And this makes one's health very good. Just as though one is eating, one is able to digest one's food very well, too. So one's health is quite good at this stage in the practice. And honesty. Now before, in the practice, one didn't know one's faults. But at this stage in the practice, one sees very clearly what one has done wrong, and one wants to make amends, one wants to correct it. And so people come to the teacher at this stage and admit, I killed animals. Or some people even come and admit, I killed a person. And people are very frank about whatever faults they remember having done. I stole things. I used to steal things. I committed adultery. I lied to people. And I see these are bad now. I see that these are bad and bring bad results. And, Venerable Sir, I resolve not to do these again. People actually come to the teachers and speak in this way. So one's attitude becomes very upright, and no amount of reading brings this about. This comes about through the practice. So it's said that when one is honest, one will never run out of food. And this is because when one is honest, other people will trust that person and will be happy to give you work. So, and with this practice, at this stage in the practice, even people who were dishonest, quite dishonest before, become honest. And then the fourth factor, effort. So, one had the intention before to observe objects, one was trying to observe without missing anything. But before this stage in the practice, there was a lot of missing. But now at this stage of the practice, the effort has become uplifted to a new stage. And the word for this is pagaha. Pagaha, virya. This virya has momentum. And it's like the way it lifts us up, the way it energizes our practice is like the way when we lift something up, and that we lift that thing up steadily so that it goes up. It just keeps on going up. It doesn't go down. It doesn't fall. So the effort at this stage is like that. It just goes up steadily. And there's also paripurna virya, or fulfilled effort. This effort is fully developed. So the reason why one's effort is this strong is because one has no concern anymore for one's life or limb in the practice. One is not worried about hurting oneself or getting sick or dying through the practice. Before, during the practice, when there was discomfort, one was afraid. But now, having overcome pain for at least one time, one understands the benefit of just going all out to observe it. So therefore, the effort that one applies in observation is very courageous. And following on that, one's knowledge also becomes increased because one sees how things arise and pass away very, very quickly. So one observes in observation, one makes effort and aims, and one sees very clearly, due to the strength of one's energy, panya bala, how things arise and whatever one sees arises and passes away very quickly. So this stage is very, very satisfying. And if a person reaches this stage and continues to practice, they will definitely gain path and fruition in this very life. So before in the practice, at times one would be discouraged and depressed, and at times one would be elated. But now at this point in the practice, one goes steadily forward. Now, within 2 weeks of practice, some people are able to gain this stage of the practice, and for some it takes 3 weeks. So if one has not reached this stage in 3 weeks, then it means that there is something missing in what one is doing in the practice. So when people reach this stage in the practice, if they don't have more time, they should extend their retreat rather than end their retreat at this stage. Because at this stage in the practice, the factors that are needed for one to gain special knowledge in this life, those 5 factors are fulfilled. So if one does not reach this stage, so or for those who do not know about the practice and therefore are missing out on the practice, for those who know about the practice of Satipatthana but don't use it, or who know and who use it but don't use it respectfully, for those people, one disturbance or another is entering one's mind, some type of disturbance. And since we are beings that live in a world of the senses, one type of disturbance that enters the mind is the desire for sense pleasures. One wants to enjoy things one likes. If one doesn't have what one wants, one demands it, and getting it, one isn't satisfied with that, one wants more. So this is kama, chanda, and nivarana, the obstacle of sense desire. When a person has this quality in their mind, they won't want to give any time to the practice of being a true human, of making the mind, the mentality humane, and of developing special human knowledge. And then there's dissatisfaction, or depression, resentment, anger, not liking what is happening. So this too is a disturbance. And these types of disturbances weaken one's knowledge and prevent the clean mind from arising. Sometimes the mind becomes intensely lazy. It retracts, it draws back, it becomes cold and unworkable. This is the obstacle of sloth and torpor, tina, metta, nivarana. And this too prevents the wholesome mind from arising and weakens knowledge. When the mind does not have any control, then it won't stick to the object. It gets scattered. And this is called udicca, restlessness. And when one remembers what one has done wrong, one feels remorse. Or remembering good things that one didn't do, one feels remorse. So this is called in Pali udicca kukucca, restlessness and remorse. And these two are a disturbance which prevent the wholesome mind from arising. And then there's also the inability to see clearly about the practice or about faith. One can't come to a decision. One doesn't know what to do. One can't see clearly. So for people who don't apply the practice, these nivaranas, these obstacles, are occurring almost all the time. And these obstacles weaken knowledge, and they prevent the wholesome mind from arising. And in ordinary people, out of 24 hours, except for the hours when one is fast asleep, this is what is happening. Now the yogis, at the start of the practice, although there wasn't much special yet, when the teachers urged them to work respectfully, meticulously, and without a break, then trusting in this instruction and following it, doing according to the instructions, effort, sati, and samadhi, virya, sati, and samadhi occur. And so the yogis, when they apply, when the object arises, they apply ardent effort. And starting with laziness, the kilesas cannot enter the mind because of the application of ardent effort. Effort brings sati, which protects the mind. And the mind that is protected falls collectedly on the object with samadhi. So at this stage in the practice, the yogi sees that the 5 obstacles to concentration, the 5 nivaranas, have been dispelled in themselves. One sees that there's no desire for sense objects arising, no kama chanda nivarana. And there's no dissatisfaction with this person or the other. There's no vyabhara nivarana. And there's no laziness. One has no laziness arising. The mind is collected on the object. There's no scattered mind arising. And one is definite about what one is observing. There's no doubt. There's no vicikiccha. So one sees that every moment of observation, these 5 bad qualities have been eliminated. And one sees that these bad qualities, which prevent the clean mind and which weaken one's knowledge, these aren't arising in one. And when one sees this, then small-scale joy arises. One feels joy such as goose flesh, minor joy. And when one continues to practice, one's joy becomes very strong. And because of this joy, the strong joy, the mind and the body become tranquil. So the mind and body both feel tranquil and peaceful, and this brings out happiness, a sense of well-being in body and mind. And because of this happiness, sukha, then the mind becomes calm. So the mind is able, because the mind is so stable, it's able to penetrate every object that arises when one observes. So it's said that when one's mind is collected in this way, that one sees things as they really are. One sees the difference between mind and matter, nama and rupa. One sees with this concentrated mind that mind and matter are related as cause and effect. And this mind and matter, which is related as cause and effect, arises and then passes away. Arising and then passing away, it's not satisfactory. And it does this completely on its own. It's just process. It has no inherent self. So one sees this very clearly at the stage of udiyabhya jnana, of seeing the fast arising and passing away of phenomena. And what occurred before in our mind occurs in momentum, has strong momentum at this stage. And so if one continues the practice at this stage, one is sure to gain special Dhamma. And this is what is said in the text, and it's also what the yogis actually can encounter and know. At this stage in the practice, when yogis have strong momentum, before, the field of observation was distant, and therefore the object of observation, although they were observing, they weren't able to remember very clearly what was seen. But now, at this stage, one sees the field of observation in a very special way. So one sees the physical phenomena quite clearly. When feelings arise, one observes the feelings and knows them very clearly. And when the mind arises, when the clean mind arises, one knows it immediately. When the unwholesome mind arises, one knows it immediately. The wholesome is to be nurtured. The unwholesome is to be dispelled. One knows this and one's observation is very clear. One also is able to observe all the general things that happen, seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, thinking, planning. So the Kaya-nupassana satipatthana is fulfilled with the observation of feelings is also happens. Observation of the mind, chitta-nupassana, also is happening when it arises, and then the observation of dhammas, dhamma-nupassana satipatthana, also. All the four foundations of mindfulness at this stage, whatever one arises, one is able to note the obvious object very well. And if one misses, one knows immediately, but mostly one is able to note without missing. So one's observation at this point is very special. At this stage in the practice, a yogi doesn't need any encouragement from the teacher to continue practicing. They just need to be corrected here and there. And they work to gain special Dhamma. And because of their practice, it is said that the Dhamma at this stage protects them. Dhammo hoe rekati dhammasari. That means that the Dhamma of the theory and the practice protects the one who is practicing according to the Dhamma by guarding them from kilesas on all levels, preventing the gross, medium and refined levels of the disturbances of the kilesas. So at this point, one sees how one is protected by the Dhamma. So at this stage, the power of the Dhamma becomes apparent. Greed, hatred, and delusion pull one down, but the Dhamma pulls one up. It lifts one up, it protects one, and it makes one's life better. Who does the Dhamma protect in this way? It protects one who practices according to the instructions of the Dhamma. The Dhamma doesn't play favorites. Only when one knows the method and then applies it with respect and care continuously does the Dhamma protect one like this. For those who don't respect the practice, who don't apply it systematically or respectfully, then this protection can't arise. So at this stage in the practice, the yogi sees the cherishable qualities of the Dhamma. One sees how very much it is to be cherished. And one doesn't back up at this stage in the practice. One just keeps on going forward. And as one continues to practice, one's Vipassana knowledge matures. So Sayadaw will speak about that tomorrow night. This is all for today. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.